G'day, Coolmnade2000 here. I'm back with another Borderlands 3 video, as today I want to talk about Melee Amara and why I think she is not a good melee character. Now when I say she's not a good melee character, I'm not specifically talking about her damage output, though that isn't one of the issues, but rather her skills, gear and overall melee playstyle are not as interesting, fleshed out or good as they could be and could be improved upon. In this video I'll go over my problems with Melee Amara as well as some suggestions on how she could be improved upon in the future. And sorry in advance if I sound like just a rambling madman with an accent, I just want to get my thoughts out on this. Please feel free to call me out on any mistakes or counter my arguments in the comments, I'm open to having my mind changed. Now I'm aware that Gearbox are gonna be releasing a patch in the future that will buff and rework the Vault Hunters as well as their damage of action skills, melee damage and a bunch of other things. But I figured I'd share my thoughts on this anyway, as maybe Gearbox could potentially implement some of my changes in a future patch. Just maybe, please Gearbox. I want to fist things to death badly. Anyway, with that covered, let's start with Melee Amara's biggest problem, her skills. Or lack thereof. One of the biggest issues that Melee Amara has is that she has fuck all skills that boost her melee capabilities, especially when compared to previous melee characters like Zero, Krieg and Brick. Compared to someone like Zero or Krieg, who had about a dozen or more skills that boosted melee, Amara has an astonishing 3 skills. Well, 5 of you include a universal damage boost and an elemental damage boost skill. Well, yes, damage isn't everything when it comes to a build, as survivability is also important, and Amara has some really good survival skills for that matter. If you can't back up that survivability with some damage, eventually you'll end up dead as a doornail. The next issue I have is with the gear she has access to, more specifically the lack of a good melee class mod. Amara, for whatever reason, has no class mod that helps her with melee builds specifically, unlike pretty much every other melee character in the series. The only 2 class mods that have come close at this are the Breaker and the Driver before it got fixed. The former gives you lackluster damage reduction when close to enemies and can boost Find Your Center, which is one of Amara's very few melee skills, while the latter gives you more gun damage the faster you move and makes you apply a dot to yourself when you use an action skill. Now the interesting thing about the Driver is that before getting fixed, it boosted all damage types, not just guns, which led to me and others making melee builds revolving around a hit and run melee playstyle that was both powerful and super fun. Unfortunately, this was an unintentional effect and was fixed fairly quickly, which was sad but understanding. However, this does lead me to how Melee Amara plays. In short, Melee Amara has pretty much 2 ways to play her. The first is a typical run to your enemies and jam your fist into them until they die or you die, which can be fun, but it's not that interesting. It's literally just run up, punch an enemy, that's it. However, the second way is to use a Face Puncher, which is a gun that scales off of melee damage and triggers melee attack artifacts, and a White Elephant artifact, which can stick a bomb to enemies when you melee. This playstyle, while more powerful than just punching, as you can shoot a gun that can stick bombs to enemies, which is nice and can deal with some good damage. This is not a melee build in my eyes, and it's just an interesting gear interaction. As you're shooting enemies, you're not actually meleeing enemies, you're shooting them with a gun. If you call that melee, then, well, you're entitled to your opinion, but I disagree heavily. I was gonna say you're wrong, but it's 2020, I can't say you're wrong because opinions and shit. So in summary, Melee Amara lacks melee boosting skills and vast damage output, a class mod that helps boost melee capabilities, and an interesting and unique playstyle in general. So how do we fix this? Well, first off, I'd remove the fix to the Driver class mod so it works with all damage types again, which will include melee damage and dot damage. This would give both Melee Amara a class mod that gives you more damage by simply moving, as well as a fun unique playstyle. Being able to run at full speed, punch an enemy and have him either die from the initial hit or the dot damage following the hit, or using your high speed to avoid attacks and get into position for follow-up attacks on other enemies was some of the most fun I had ever with a melee build in Borderlands, and being able to do that again would be awesome. Alternatively, they could just make a class mod like the driver but have it work for melee and dot damage and have it boost Amara's few melee skills to give even more damage. Speaking of skills, I would make Amara's existing melee skills do way more damage, as well as make a bunch of her other skills give buffs to her melee damage so that she has more than 3 goddamn melee skills. One of the skills they could add bonus melee damage to is Root to Rise, a tier 1 skill in the Brawler skill tree that boosts max health. This would give melee players a skill they can invest in from the get-go to help them out at the beginning of the game. Because I forgot to mention that Amara doesn't have any tier 1 melee skills. Literally every other melee character in the series has had a tier 1 melee skill. What the hell? Alternatively, if Gearbox decide to give the current Vault Hunters a 4th skill tree, they could make that 4th skill tree have more focus on melee, and that could fix the problem because that just gives you more skills to work with. So yeah, that about covers everything I think. In summary, Melee Amara has no good melee class mod, her playstyle is not as interesting or as unique as it could be, and she has fuck all melee skills. And this can be improved by boosting her current skills and adding melee damage to her other skills, and by removing the fix on the driver to give Melee Amara both a good class mod and an interesting playstyle. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to stay up to date with my content. I hope this video was interesting for you and that I didn't sound like a whiny little bitch, as I really do enjoy Borderlands 3 and Melee Amara has some great potential. She just needs a little bit of help, and hopefully when Gearbox come out with a patch that changes, that overhauls everything about the games, the Vault Hunters, well, skills and damage and shit, hopefully they fix Melee Amara and she becomes a great melee character. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll talk to you guys later.